From the CyberHub bunker and studio, you're tuning in to the CyberHub Podcast. And now for your host and CISO, James Azar.
Good morning. Happy Monday, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the CyberHub Podcast, August 19th, 2024. Packed show for all of y'all this morning. Let's go ahead, get the ball going. Thank you for tuning in. Now, before we get started on this morning's show, I hope everyone had a good weekend. I hope you're ready to go because I've got my double espresso here this morning for our coffee cup cheers. Whatever you're drinking, I hope you enjoy it. I hope it's yours. Coffee cup cheers, y'all. Yeah. Love a good espresso on a Monday morning. Love it every morning. In fact, I have what some may call an addiction. Let's go ahead and kick off with the finally, we're getting some confirmation from the national public data that attackers breached their systems after a leak of the stolen database with millions of social security numbers and other sensitive personal information was put online. The statement that the national public data disclosed says the following: the information that was suspected of being breached contained names, email addresses, phone numbers, social security number, and mailing addresses. The company acknowledges the leak of certain data in April of 2024 and summer of 2024, meaning this data leak happened twice based on right now, and believes that the breach is associated with a threat actor that was trying to hack into the data back in late December of 2023. NPD says they investigated the incident, cooperated with law enforcement, reviewed the potentially affected records. If significant developments occur, the company will try to notify the impacted individuals. Okay, so let's kind of, if this is your first time tuning in because you saw this breach and you go, this feels like Equifax all over again, and you have that feeling, you're right. Same exact feeling, only this one's a little bit more significant. The Equifax data breach included credit records. This is national data background checks, right? So there's some significance to this breach. Let's start off with that. So one, there's going to be extreme significance to this. Extreme. And I imagine there's going to be class action lawsuits, and I imagine there's going to be a whole bunch of legal action and congressional investigation, especially when we're 3 months away from an election. Everyone wants to grandstand. So there's that. Number two, from a realistic perspective, they're just starting to investigate this. And apparently, based on their initial forensics, based on their statements, they had someone try to hack them in December. So that's 9 months ago. May or may not have been successful. However, 4 months later, in April of this year, they were hacked. And then again, they say in the summer. We're in summer. It's August. It's still summer. Fall isn't for another month or so, right? Fall. So we're still summer, meaning that they've had an attempt and then back-to-back breaches. That doesn't look good. Just off the top, that statement does not look good. That doesn't show that they've got a mature security program. That doesn't show that they take security seriously. When you have that many events in that time period and you host the data that you host and you have the data that you have, you should know better than that. Obviously, this all kind of started when the US DoD, a threat actor, essentially leaked the data and said he's selling 2.9 billion records stolen from NPD for $3.5 million. So there's that as well. We'll see how this kind of goes through, but if you're feeling that eerie feeling you felt in September of 2017, in August of 2024, you're absolutely right in feeling that. CISO on Thursday is warning of a fresh critical severity vulnerability in SolarWinds web help desk that's being exploited in attack. CVE 2024-289-86 has a CVSS score of 9.8. It's described as a Java deserialization remote code execution issue that could allow attackers to run commands on host machines. SolarWinds announced a hot fix this week that addresses the vulnerability, noting authentication is required for successful exploitation without mentioning it's in the wild exploit that CISO was kind enough to share. While it was reported as an unauthenticated vulnerability, SolarWinds has been unable to reproduce it without authentication after thorough testing. However, SolarWinds did recommend that all customers apply the available patch, which is compatible with the Web Help Desk version 12.8.3.1813, only urging users of previous iterations to upgrade as soon as possible. The flaw impacts versions 12.4 to 12.8 of the Help Desk solution. The company has since updated the advisory to warn that the hotfix should not be applied to Web Desk installation if SAML is utilized. On Thursday, 2 days after SolarWinds announced the hotfix, CISO added it to its Kev catalog based on evidence of active exploitation. So you want to make sure you get that done. And if you're in the federal space, you have until September 5th to get that patch taken care of. A widespread misconfiguration in Oracle's NetSuite Commerce Enterprise Resource Planning platform is leaving sensitive and customer data exposed across thousands of websites, according to Omni, which uncovered the issue. They're describing how many businesses are using NetSuite to support e-commerce have inadvertently allowed unauthorized access to customer records due to a misconfigured access control on custom record types. These CRTs store critical data like PII and phone numbers, making them an attractive target for criminals. Thousands of these organizations are leaking sensitive customer data to the public through misconfigs. So, bottom line here is apparently there's a misconfiguration within NetSuite. This misconfiguration is actually allowing data to be exposed, and so theoretically speaking, if someone knew where to look, they would find it. And mind you, there's so many people looking in the internet that at some point or another they find it. And so this kind of goes into the idea of SaaS security, right? You want to make sure you're kind of monitoring your SaaS application, not only for access and who's using it, but what data's there. And you kind of want to have that data fabric, and you want to know what's going on there. You want to be auditing access controls, and you want to understand what they are. And this is, by the way, a very, very significant challenge, right? The rise and ease of use of SaaS has introduced challenges for cybersecurity practitioners. That's why we've partnered with Nudge, right? So Nudge Security, just as you all know, does SaaS security. You can go get a 14-day free trial now. Again, they're not sponsoring this episode, but I'd be remiss talking about the story not mentioning Nudge, right? We used it internally. Like, it was great. It kind of laid us out every SaaS application every single person was using. We compared that to the list that was reported to us, and guess what? There were discrepancies. And then we've had to kind of reach out and understand, why are you using it? How are you using it? What data is there, etc., to kind of get a better grasp of SaaS. And so you want to be able to do that. That's the issue with NetSuite here. Only that the SaaS app misconfigured exposes data and leaves customer data out there. And again, this goes into the idea of how you screen SaaS applications, how you manage SaaS applications, and so forth. So there's that as well. Technology vendors are remaining a high value and opportunistic target for threat groups because of the broad reach their services have into customer environments in every sectors. This is coming after manual techniques fuel additional ransomwares, according to Mandiant. The financially motivated attackers compromised more than 100 Snowflake customers in the wave of attacks back in April, right? And so we're seeing more and more SaaS customers, more and more of these SaaS companies become victims of ransomware simply because of the downstream impact. So far this year, it's been alleged that $460 million was paid in extortion demands. And I've seen numbers at 450, and I've seen that was other numbers at 520. I don't know where people come up with these numbers. I'm sure there's some tracking mechanism. I tried to find it before the show, couldn't find it. So I'm just quoting this specific news story. And by the way, the link is in the show notes. So if you want to validate, if you want to let us know what you see, I'm happy to make corrections later on. This year also marked the largest ransom payment ever recorded at $75 million. So all in all, you know, the intertwined of SaaS and platforms and infrastructure, and the idea that you can essentially go after one, cripple thousands, is significant. It's something that threat actors are using, and something to keep an eye on. If you haven't subscribed to our Substack, please make sure to go do so right now. jamesazar.substack.com. If you're not following us on your favorite social media platforms, please make sure to do so now, and on your favorite podcast listening platforms as well. Go check that out. A crypto firm says that attackers locked all employees out of their Google products for 4 days. The prominent cryptocurrency told the SEC that attackers broke into their systems and locked all of their companies out, and it took them 4 days to recover their G Suite enterprise and get people back up and running. This is Unicoin that filed the regulatory documents on Thursday of last week, saying the attack began on August 9th and that it took them until August 13th to essentially gain access back to their domain. The company is examining what information was accessed to determine and mitigate the impact of the event. While there's no evidence that any assets were stolen, it still remains quite interesting why they were locked out of that. Unicoin is one of the few cryptocurrency companies that makes reports to the SEC. Its coin is backed by a portfolio of assets that include real estate and equity in other companies. The company sold more than $500 million worth of Unicoin. So all in all, they are just that. We'll see how this one we'll keep an eye on this one. It's significant. Researchers at Palo Alto are spotting extortion organizations attempting to compromise cloud environments using inadvertently exposed environment variables as part of the extortion campaign. Palo's warning that attackers targeted 110,000 domains through exposed ENV files containing sensitive information, which were stored on unsecured web application and misconfigured servers. And again, this goes to the idea of one, your guys are in your team, and I shouldn't say guys, but I should say your team is one working in dev. They're building stuff up, they're testing it, and then a lot of times they're not taking it down. In fact, most of the times they're not taking it down, right? So that leaves kind of information out there, and then if it moves into pre-production and then production, then that kind of becomes there's some sort of connection there. Typically, there's always some sort of backdoor that people could use, and that's what they do. You got to protect these. Obviously, through these, they can extract IAM access keys from AWS or Azure or any other platform. Palo, for their end, identified over 90,000 unique variables and exposed ENV files, including 7,000 belonging to organizations' cloud services and 1,500 for social media accounts. And again, credentials were in there, as well as VPN tools and whatnot. They were moving laterally within that for reconnaissance, and using that for data exfiltration. They were using a virtual private server for that as well. Palo observed threat actors scanning and identifying exposed ENV files. They were performing various discovery API calls to learn more about services like IAM security token services, simple storage service, and simple email service. Again, if you're not monitoring your APIs, if you're not sitting there, you're in a world of hurt, a real world of hurt. Microsoft, for their end, is stepping up Azure account protection with mandatory MFA that will be enforced on all Azure sign-ins starting in October. Why October? Anyways, long story short, they're now requiring anyone who ever logs into Azure to use MFA going forward. So that's going to be awesome. And by the way, the Committee on Foreign Investments in the United States, U.S. government agency responsible for reviewing foreign investments, has levied a $60 million fine on T-Mobile following a series of unauthorized data access incidents. The infractions, which occurred between August of 2020 and June of 2021, violating a key provision of the national security agreement that T-Mobile entered into as part of their 2020 merger with Sprint. The merger between T-Mobile and Sprint was approved, which aimed to mitigate potential national security risks. However, T-Mobile failed to adhere to the agreement by not taking adequate measures to prevent unauthorized access to sensitive data. All in all, they got a $60 million fine, which is nothing. It's a drop in the bucket for T-Mobile. So there's that. That's it for our show this morning. We'll be back tomorrow, 9 a.m. Eastern, live with all the latest and greatest. Make sure to subscribe, follow, comment, share. I see some comments, and we'll get to those after the show here. Thank you all for tuning in. Have a great week. Have a great rest of your day. And most importantly, stay cyber safe.
We love feedback, so make sure to connect with us on social media and subscribe to our podcast on your favorite podcast listening platform.